Prosecution, you have everyone you need?
Yes, Your Honor.
All right, let's go ahead and get started. I'm going to call this court case into session. Quick reminder about contempt. Don't make me hand it out, please.
Peanut gallery, please. Peanut gallery. Please, we're getting called into session.
Yeah, I'm sorry. Could you repeat that, Your Honor? Someone was speaking.
Well, perfect example. Court is in session. Please be quiet if you are viewing. Whisper or don't talk at all because the defense as well as prosecution will not be able to hear questioning or important things that are going on in the courtroom. No outbursts, no foul language, anything like that. That being said, I'm going to read the statement of charges. On February 21st, Boba Stone was last seen alive with Jordan Steele. Not even 20 minutes later of this last sighting of a living Mr. Boba Stone, he was found dead in a parking lot from a stab wound. Jordan Steele is hereby accused of the criminal charge of murder based on the evidence submitted in this filing. Mr. Steele, count one of the indictment. Murder of a government employee, how do you plead?
Not guilty.
Okay. Today we have District Attorney's Office here, Mr. Bunbury, Mr. Slainer, and on defense, I'm not sure of your names. What's your names, defense counsel?
Benjamin Crane for the defendant, Your Honor.
All right, Mr. Crane and
Nick Grayson.
Mr. Grayson. All right, let's start with opening. Prosecution, go ahead.
Okay. Thank you, Your Honor. Your Honor, people of the court, on February 21st, the great city of Los Santos lost a beloved member of its community, a friend, a brother, a man so empathetic and kind in his ways that he would put himself in harm's way to save others as an emergency medical technician in a city plagued by violence and crime. On February 21st, Boba Stone was taken from us in one of the worst ways imaginable, through a stab wound to the neck. According to the autopsy report, Boba Stone did not die from an immediately fatal wound to the artery. No. He instead drowned in his own blood, suffocating to death. Your Honor, the people wish to bring this atrocity, this crime, to justice. And I, as the District Attorney, and Ernest Bunbury II as my assistant, will do everything in our power to uphold the people's justice, to remove a murderer from the streets of Los Santos, to ensure that people like Jordan Steele never take another brilliant and kind man like Boba Stone away from us. Thank you.
Defense.
Oh, all right. I'll just walk that way. Your Honor, and may it please the court. My name is Benjamin Crane. I'm the attorney who's been requested to represent Mr. Steele in this case. We all just had to listen to the state's summation, which, although accurate, makes it sound as though this crime could have only been committed by a psychopath. As described, the victim herein was an icon of the city. What's more, he was also a friend of the defendant as well as a part-time employee of his. The state this evening is going to present nothing more than circumstantial evidence, which is a bit of a voodoo word in the law. It's not always bad. Oftentimes, cases can only be proved via circumstantial evidence. However, I like to think of circumstantial evidence like a chain. If you're missing a link, it becomes completely and utterly worthless, or at the very least, two smaller chains. You will hear tonight that the state is missing perhaps a dozen links in the chains that they've brought with them to the court today. And further, a chain is only as strong as its weakest link, and the state has very weak links in its chains. To name a few, they will be unable to provide any link in the chain that indicates a motive for the murder that's been committed. They have no link in the chain showing that the defendant and victim were still together at the time of the incident, and they will have no link in the chain showing that the defendant had the means, the capacity, or even the exclusive opportunity to commit the crime that they posit he committed tonight. Finally, you will hear tonight that the police, after considering that they had found their primary suspect, all but ceased to investigate this crime. So, without wasting further time, the defense will ask you at the end of this case whether the government has proven beyond a shadow of a reasonable doubt whether or not the defendant in fact murdered Boba Stone, his loved friend, and his part-time employee. Thank you.
Okay, thank you. Let's go ahead and get started. Prosecution, you may call your first witness.
Great. Our first witness today, Your Honor, will be Medic Chloe Brooks.
Chloe, go ahead and raise your left hand. Do you swear to tell the truth, the whole truth, nothing but the truth, under penalties of perjury, so help you Nikes?
Yes, I do.
This witness has been sworn in, Your Honor.
Thank you. You may begin questioning.
Great. Thank you for being here this evening, Brooks. Just have some questions that, of course, I would like to ask you. On February 21st, 2020, this year, when did you last see Medic Boba Stone?
I saw him leaving the Integrity Apartments last.
Okay, could you tell us what he was wearing?
We called it his parking stripper outfit. He would always wear it. It was kind of like the little safety vest thingy, and then he'd wear the really short shorts that were colorful, no top underneath. He would wear it when he'd go towing.
Okay. Is there any other significance to this outfit that he would wear?
He usually wore it back in the day when he'd go towing with Jordan and Hayden.
Okay. What was Boba Stone doing when you last saw him?
He was hopping into a white truck with Jordan.
Okay. Did you speak with Boba Stone?
Yes, I did earlier. He told me he was going to go spend time with Jordan.
All right. That was it. Anything else that he told you?
Nope, just that he was going to go spend time with Jordan.
All right. And when exactly did Boba leave?
He told me he was spending time with Jordan, and then he got into the truck, and then he left.
Do you know where they went?
They headed down towards Garage T, and then they turned right onto, what's that street? I think it's San Andreas Avenue, and then I couldn't see them anymore.
Okay. And when was it that you learned of Mr. Stone's demise?
Not even 20 minutes later.
Mm-hmm. All right. I believe that's all we have for on our side. All right.
Don't let me catch you talking back there. People need to hear what's going on up here. You may cross.
All right. Miss Brooks, if I ask any questions that you don't understand, can you and I have an agreement that you will just tell me as much so that I can get them rephrased for you?
Of course.
All right, let me take out my notepad here. All right. So the last time that you saw Mr. Stone was when he was leaving the Integrity Apartments. That's the one that's just directly south of Pillbox Medical Hospital, right?
Correct.
All right. And he was wearing this parking stripper uniform. You say he always wore that when he would go towing with Jordan. Is that correct?
Correct.
How often would he go towing with the defendant herein?
Recently, they didn't, to my knowledge. I never saw him wearing it. He was mostly on duty, but he used to a lot.
Used to it. Was that prior to him getting a job at the at Pillbox, or?
It was prior to Jordan getting a job as a cop.
Okay. So once Jordan got a job as a cop, they didn't spend quite as much time together.
Correct.
Okay. But since Mr. Steele had found himself with a bit more free time, had they gone towing any other times recently? Together, to the best of your knowledge?
I am unsure. That was the only time. Boba and I worked different shifts, so we didn't see each other a whole lot.
I understand. And this last time that you saw Mr. Stone, what was his general demeanor regarding going? You said he was going to go hang out with Jordan, go towing with him. What was his general demeanor about that?
He seemed pretty happy.
Seemed pretty happy, pretty carefree. Did he seem to be in any kind of upset mood or arguing with Mr. Steele or anything like that when you saw him get into the vehicle?
No, he just told me he was going to go spend time with him, and he left. That was it. He didn't seem sad or anything. He seemed pretty happy.
All right. And at this time, you saw him get into Mr. Steele's vehicle. Did you did you speak with Mr. Steele at all, or did you just see him get in and leave?
I just saw him get in and leave.
Okay. So you didn't catch any demeanor from Mr. Steele in that interaction then?
No, I did not.
Okay. Would it be fair to say that, at the best of your knowledge, the victim and the defendant herein were on relatively friendly terms then? They're going to spend time together towing or anything like that?
To my knowledge, they were friends.
All right. And you saw them head down towards Garage T and turned right, then you completely lost sight of them, right?
Correct.
Did you hear from Mr. Steele at any point after that?
No. No, I did not.
Okay. And just to clarify, you said it was not even 20 minutes later. Can you give me an exact or an approximate time that you saw Mr. Stone being picked up by Mr. Steele?
I'd say. Wait, sorry. When I said not even 20 minutes, it was to him being brought to the hospital.
Yeah, that was the time difference between him being brought to the hospital and.
Is that what you're asking? Sorry.
Well, I'm just asking generally, like what time of day? Like if you had to think with an Eastern brain, what time of day would you say it was he was picked up?
It was a while ago. I genuinely don't remember what time of day it was.
Okay. Do you remember if it was? Well, no, that question's not particularly relevant. Unless my co-counsel's got anything else, then I've got no further questions for the witness, Your Honor.
Mm-hmm. Co-counsel, do you have anything?
Your whisper.
Speak up. Do you have any questions for this witness?
He's
Yeah,
speaking, but he
you're-
ain't saying
Yeah,
nothing.
I can't
No.
hear this guy at all. Oh,
My
he said-
apologies. No, Your Honor.
Okay. All right, prosecution, would you like to redirect?
No. Explain it.
All right. Is this witness up for recall?
No, Your Honor. I don't think we have anything else for Miss Brooks.
All right, Ms. Brooks, you may step down. Thank you. Prosecution, go ahead and call your next witness.
Your Honor, the people call Chief of EMS Sam McIntyre to the stand.
All right, McIntyre.
Go ahead and raise your left hand, Sam.
Ugh.
Do you swear to tell the truth, the whole truth, and nothing but the truth, under penalties of perjury, so help you sin?
So help me, son.
This witness has been sworn in, Your Honor.
Thank you, bailiff. Prosecution, you may begin questioning.
Thank you, Your Honor. Give me 1 second to prepare my notes. Alrighty, Miss McIntyre, how are you this evening?
I'm doing well. How are you?
I'm good, thank you for asking. On February 21st, 2020, when did you last see EMS Boba Stone?
Just after he went off duty.
What was he wearing?
Similar to what Chloe said, he was wearing very short shorts, his vest, something that he used to wear a lot when he was off duty.
Okay, is this outfit significant in any way?
I don't know his personal life quite as much as Chloe does, so I couldn't attest to that. But I just know that he wore it off duty.
Okay. What was Boba Stone doing when you last saw him?
When I last saw him, he was getting into a very large white truck with Jordan Steele.
Did you speak with Boba Stone before he got in the truck?
Yes, I did.
What did that conversation entail?
He simply told me he was going 42, which means that he was going off duty.
Okay. Did Boba Stone leave with anyone?
He left with Jordan.
Okay. Where did they go?
They went down towards Garage T in that direction. I didn't see them turn in either direction, but they went in that way.
Okay. When did you learn of Boba Stone's demise?
About 10 to 15 minutes after they had left.
Okay. I have no further questions for this witness.
Defense, you may cross.
I think this will be a brief one. All right. You said you're the co-chief of EMS, or are you the chief? Miss
Co-chief.
McIntyre? Co-chief McIntyre. I just want to make sure I'm addressing you correctly.
Chloe is the other co-chief.
All right. How often did you work with Mr. Stone?
Quite often. I would say about twice a week.
Okay, but you said that you weren't as familiar with his personal life. Did you two just not have conversations about that sort of thing, or strictly a professional relationship?
Yeah, we mostly saw each other at the workplace.
Okay. Were you able to ascertain any sort of demeanor from him whenever he was going to meet with Mr. Steele during the brief conversation you had before he left?
He sort of seemed like he was rushed, but he didn't seem like he was out of sorts or anything.
All right. So it would be fair to say he didn't seem like he was in a bad mood necessarily, just kind of wanted to
No.
get out the door.
Yeah, that's all.
That feeling that we all have when we just want to go home after a long day's work kind of thing.
Sure.
Okay. All right. So you, during your time of employment with Mr. Stone, you never spoke to him about his relationship with Mr. Steele?
Hold on. Mr. Smith, what the hell are you doing?
Excuse me?
Mr. Smith,
What are you doing?
I was just testing my camera equipment.
Could you not test it in the courtroom unless you get permission from the judges to take pictures in it?
Yes,
He said he was
wasn't
gonna
taking-
frame me outside.
I don't know what he's talking about. I'm sorry, Your Honor.
Frame
I
a
never
nice
took
picture. Yeah.
I never took any pictures, Your Honor. I just
He
had the
said he was
camera.
gonna frame me of a murder outside.
All right, let's put that away.
Yes, sir. I apologize.
Can you continue?
Good start that question.
All right. Let me see if I can pick up where I left off. So during your course of employment with Mr. Stone, did he ever speak about his relationship with Mr. Steele in any capacity?
No.
Okay. So, and you testified previously you're not familiar as to what he was doing with his quote-unquote parking stripper uniform, right?
No, I have no idea why he wore it.
Okay. At approximately what time would you say it was that Mr. Stone was picked up by Mr. Steele?
It was sometime in the afternoon. I couldn't tell you exactly what time, though.
Sometime in the could you define afternoon for me? Are we talking like 2 to 3 in the afternoon, 4 to 5?
I honestly couldn't specify. All I know is that it was pretty bright outside.
All right, and if I were to ask you to think with an Eastern time zone brain, you wouldn't know around what time that was, would you?
No, it was so long ago I couldn't tell you.
So, but you said it was 10 to 15 minutes. We just heard from Miss Brooks that it was about 20 minutes. Is there any reason for the difference in the time discrepancy there, or do you think it's just because it's been a while?
I believe she said no more than 20.
No more than 20.
Which means there's
fair
no
enough.
discrepancy.
All right. No further questions for this witness, Your Honor.
Okay, would you like to redirect?
No, Your Honor.
All right, Ms. McIntyre, you may step down. Thank you.
Thank you, ma'am.
Mind glass.
Prosecution, go ahead and call your next witness.
Sure. Our next witness will be Medic Bree Matthews.
Ex-medic.
Ex-medic Bree Matthews. Apologies.
Go and raise your left hand there, Bree. Do you swear to tell the truth, the whole truth, and nothing but the truth, under penalties of perjury, so help you ghost?
Yeah.
This witness has been sworn in, Your Honor.
Thank you. You may begin your questioning.
Great. Thank you for being here, Miss Matthews. Going to be running through the same sort of questions. When did you last see Boba Stone alive?
When we were on duty, we were supposed to be on duty together, but then I don't know, he ran out of the hospital in his parking demigod outfit. He so
Okay.
puts it, and then got partnered up with another medic.
Right. So you were on duty on February 21st of this year?
Yeah.
Great. What were your job duties at this time?
Responding to calls, people getting injured, standard EMS kind of things.
Did you respond to any calls that might be noteworthy to this case on the 21st of February?
I mean, yeah, I responded. There was There was a call from a local that came in that said that there was body at this garage. I don't remember the name of the garage. And then I show up and it's my ex-husband.
Okay. Would you mind telling us the location of where the garage was, roughly, if you don't remember the name?
I mean, I can pull it up on the GPS on my phone real quick. Don't remember the exact location from it. It was kind of hidden in between two buildings. I could take us there, but I don't know like the exact street
That's all
location.
right.
It's kind of hidden in an alleyway.
That's okay. It won't be necessary today. Thank you, though. And could you tell us, again, you just gave us a brief description of what you found on the scene when you arrived?
Yeah, I got out of the ambulance and I noticed the bright visor on the ground, and I noticed it was my ex-husband. There was a lot of blood. I was trying to find the source of it, and he had a large gash on his neck. I held pressure as best as I could while my partner, Alan, was trying to see if he had a pulse and get him hooked up on an IV, and there was just so much blood everywhere. It was kind of surreal. I've never seen that much before.
I'm sorry you had to. I'm very sorry that you had to go through that. Did you notice anyone leaving the scene?
No, I didn't see anyone there besides me and my partner and Boba on the ground.
Hey, how much blood was there when you ripped out his heart? Huh?
Fuck you, Jordan Steele!
Mr.
You
Steele.
murdered
How
my
much blood was there
ex-husband!
then?
Mr. Steele,
Fuck you!
no outbursts, please.
Mr. Steele, you're going to be receiving contempt. I will let you know the time and fine later.
Who cares? I'm fucking in prison anyways.
Okay, well, you're going to be in there for longer.
Are you okay, Miss Matthews?
Hey, can I get a minute? I'm just...
Yep, take your time.
He and I were married for so long. And it was, the reason I quit EMS, so just give me a minute.
Sure, please.
Thank you.
Issue for you.
You keys, I appreciate that.
Not a problem.
Okay.
All right. So, you assessed the victim. What was your assessment?
There was a very, very faint pulse. He wasn't responsive though, and the fact that, you know, he wasn't conscious or anything. We got him loaded up on the stretcher and put him in the ambulance and brought him to the hospital.
And after he passed away, he was taken to the morgue. Were you present at the morgue during
Yes, I
Boba Stone's
was.
viewing?
Yes, I was the entire time.
Was the defendant there?
Yes, he was.
What did the defendant do while at the morgue?
He was screaming and he was being irate and he was asking for my ex-husband's body. And he was screaming. He wanted his body, and at one point he carried it out down a hallway before PD made him drop it. My ex-husband's body.
Why was
Carrying
he
it around
trying
like
to
a
take
rag
your
doll.
ex-husband's body, Matthews?
Sorry, what was that?
Why was he trying to kidnap this body?
I don't know.
All right.
Psychopath, probably. That's why.
Unless Splainer unless Splainer has anything, I believe we have no further questions.
I have no questions.
All right.
Defense, you may cross.
All right, Miss Matthews, I'm going to tell you the same thing that I told Miss Brooks. If I ask any questions that you don't understand, just please ask me to rephrase them. I'm going to add the caveat that if I ask any questions that you need to take a minute with, then please also tell me that, okay?
Okay.
We're going to have to talk about a couple of details here, and I understand that this can be hard given the nature of the circumstances, but details are very important. So you, we'll just start at the top. You last saw Mr. Stone when he was supposed to be on duty, is that correct?
Yeah, and then he went off duty. had his parking demigod outfit on with his rainbow shoes that I was jealous of.
And under what circumstances would Mr. Stone wear this parking demigod outfit?
He would only wear it if he was going to go towing with Caden or Jordan Steele, because I had a similar outfit, and sometimes we would do that together. It's the only time I ever saw him wear that during the duration of our marriage and afterwards.
So would it be fair to say that Boba and yourself both had a relatively friendly relationship with Caden and Jordan Steele?
No, I didn't really, no.
What about the decedent, Mr. Stone?
He was good friends with them, yeah.
Did you exchange any words with Boba before he went 1042 and was going to meet with Mr. Steele?
I just asked what he was doing, and he's like, I'm just going to go tow some cars. Okay, just leave me here, I guess. Kind of hurt by it, but...
Yeah, felt a little abandoned at that moment, perhaps. All right, so then you proceeded to go on duty. After that, you said you were teamed up with another medic. What was their name?
Alan Beast.
Is that Alan or Helen?
Alan.
Alan Beast. Okay. How long were you on duty before you received the call that you previously spoke about?
Maybe an hour. I'm not sure.
Approximately an hour. So you saw Mr. You saw Boba going off duty. You saw him in his parking demigod outfit, saying he was going to go spend time with Mr. Steele, and then it was about an hour before you.
Oh no, I was on duty, but we weren't partnered together. I think he was in the rapid responder, so he was going solo. I don't know how long it was between when I saw him and then when I found his body.
All right, and that would just be because it's been a little bit of time, I suppose.
Right.
All right. So you responded to the case that you've already talked to us about. Now I'm gonna need us to slow down a little to go through that. Whenever you arrived on scene, can you remember the specific details of the 911 call that led you to that scene?
I don't remember the specific call. It was just someone stumbled upon his body and said that there was someone at the garage that needed medical.
All right. And you arrived on scene to unfortunately find Mr. Stone with a copious amount of blood. Is that correct?
My ex-husband had a massive gash in his throat. It was just bleeding everywhere. Yeah.
All right. Once again, Ms. Matthews, if you need to take a second to breathe, feel free to do so. But I do need to clarify one thing.
Okay.
The unfortunately, it seems there's been a little bit of conflict regarding the nature of his wound. When you say gash, can you describe that a little more clearly for me? What do you mean by a gash?
It looked like someone sliced his throat. I've never really seen anything like that before.
So I suppose in medical terminology, you would probably call that a laceration, correct? And it to the best of your recollection, this was not a puncture wound then, is that correct?
I don't believe so, but there was a lot of blood on scene. I could be mistaken. I believe the doctors would know more. It was just, we found him and we wanted to get him out of that situation as soon as possible.
All right. Well, let me ask a couple of questions that might help clarify. Then you said you were applying pressure to the wound while your compatriot Alan they were starting an IV, right?
Yes.
I suppose, is it part of your standard procedure to apply any sort of bandages or packing gauze to such wounds?
Yes. There was a lot of blood. I was trying to hold pressure. Excuse me. Well, getting it prepped, but it was. You ever had like an out of body experience where you just kind of freeze and then you watch yourself performing your actions without consciously thinking about it? It was something like that, you know. We see so many calls per day of people getting shot and stabbed, and it's just, you kind of just go on autopilot at a certain point.
So you, despite the personal nature of this call, then, despite the fact that this was your ex-husband and friend, you went into that autopilot mode.
Yeah. Just trying to save him. Because
All right,
otherwise I would have just freaked out and wouldn't have been good for anyone involved.
All right. How much time would you say elapsed between you arriving at the scene of this call and arriving back at the hospital with Mr. Stone?
It was close to pillbox, so maybe we were on scene for maybe 2 minutes before realizing we had to get him there. And so maybe another minute driving, if that. It was very quick.
Okay. And again, this is going to be a question you may not be able to answer. If you don't remember, just say so. But do you remember the time that that call came in?
I don't. I remember I got on duty a little bit earlier than I normally do. So maybe between, if this was an Eastern thing, 7 and 9?
Okay, so sometime during that 7 p.m. and 9 p.m. window then. All right. Jumping ahead a little bit in time, did you spend any time with the doctors while they were treating him, or were you ushered out of the room at that time?
No, I was ushered out of the room. I was in the hallway for most of it. I could hear what they were doing, but I couldn't see anything.
All right. Well, I'm not going to ask you questions about hearsay or things that may or may not have happened. So let's go ahead and jump ahead to the time of viewing at the morgue. You said that the defendant came in. Can you identify the defendant in the courtroom for me?
Stupid white hat. There.
I'd be careful insulting the hat. Apparently, it's in
This hat's a
memoriam of one
memorial
of the.
for a fallen officer. Real good.
Which one?
Diaz is my understanding. It's not really pertinent. So you said that he arrived on scene. Could you describe his general demeanor for me?
He was freaking out. He was yelling at everyone. He was trying to ask the doctor to take Boba's body. He was freaking out. He was upsetting everyone in there who was trying to pay their respects.
Would as a medical professional or as someone with personal knowledge of Mr. Steele, would you be able to say whether or not he was either suffering from some sort of psychological break or if he was under the influence, perhaps? Or did this just seem like another Tuesday for you?
Objection, Your Honor, compound question.
Oh boy, you know how to object. I am shocked by that. Do you have a rebuttal?
No, Your Honor. I'll just break the question down.
Okay, sustained.
Did Mr. Steele seem like he was under the influence of any intoxicating substances?
Jordan, if I'm being honest.
Sorry, I think I missed the beginning of that.
I said I don't know. It seemed like typical Jordan Steele, to be honest.
And as a follow-up to that, did he, you're saying it seemed like typical Jordan Steele, so he didn't seem like he was any more psychologically impaired than normal? This was just a normal Tuesday?
Normal Tuesday in Los Santos, yes.
Fair enough. All right. Got one last series of questions for you, Miss Matthews. You brought up something interesting earlier. You said that Mr. Stone was pretty good friends with Mr. Steele, but you weren't. Can you elaborate on that for me?
Objection, relevance.
It goes to the bias of the witness, Your Honor, and the door was already opened earlier.
Well, repeat your question.
I'm gonna go ahead and overrule that. I heard it.
Sure.
Okay.
What was
Miss
the
Matthews,
question?
I'll just go ahead and repeat it for you. Can you elaborate by what you meant earlier when you said that you did not have a good relationship with Mr. Steele?
Oh, I don't really know him that well, you know. I know him when I respond to PD requests or anything like that. I wouldn't say I disliked him. I didn't know him.
But as you previously testified, it's Mr. Stone was, you said, good friends with him.
Objection asked and answered.
No rebuttal, Your Honors.
Sustained.
All right, and one last question then. This parking demigod outfit. What was the genesis of the name for that, if you don't mind me asking?
He was trying to model it after the parking god, which was Jordan Steele's nickname.
So, at least in some capacity, then Jordan Steele was actually a model for Mr. Stone.
Objection, counsel is testifying, and there's no question there.
Rebuttal.
No rebuttal, Your Honors. I've got no further questions. Thank you, Miss Matthews.
Sustained. You better start thinking of some rebuttals. Just stop asking these kind of questions. Would you like to redirect?
I have no questions for redirect, Your Honor. We're done.
All right, Miss Stone, Miss Matthews, you may step down. Appreciate it.
Find the Glassbury.
Prosecution, go ahead and call your next witness.
The prosecution would like to call Officer Lance Malton to the stand.
Murderer.
Malton, go ahead and jump.
Malton, go ahead and raise your left hand for me. Do you swear to tell the truth, the whole truth, and nothing but the truth under penalties of perjury, so help you Slasher?
I do.
Witness has been sworn in, Your Honor.
Thank you. Go ahead and start your questioning.
Thank you, Your Honor. Officer Malton, how are you this evening?
Doing good, sir. Thank you.
Okay, on February 21st, 2020, how did you learn of Boba Stone's demise?
We were called to the hospital for reports of a dead person.
When you responded to this call, what did you find?
Boba Stone was murdered, basically. Or correction, dead. I didn't know it was a murder when I arrived.
Was the murder scene identified to you?
It was.
Did you investigate the murder scene?
I did.
And what did you find?
In a kind of like parking booth or attendant booth on the parking lot there, we did find blood on scene. And that blood was later identified as belonging to Boba Stone.
Okay. Was an investigation opened into the murder of Boba Stone?
Yes, sir.
Who was the officer in charge of that investigation?
That would have been myself and then Sergeant Copper.
Was any evidence collected on the scene of the murder?
On the scene of the murder, we collected the blood forensic evidence.
Does the setting of the scene of the crime bear any significance to the defendant, to your knowledge?
Oh, it is a parking...
Objection, Your Honor. Speculation, and yeah.
Rebuttal.
I'm asking him to the best of his abilities due to the fact that he investigated the situation, meaning he would have looked into the personal relationship between Jordan Steele and Boba Stone and what the scene may have any importance, if any, to the crime at hand.
Okay, and what was your question?
To the best of your knowledge, does the scene of the crime bear any significance to the defendant?
I'm going to overrule.
Thank you, Your Honor.
It was in the general direction of where Jordan Steele and Boba Stone were last seen heading.
Okay. On February 21st, did you visit the morgue?
I did.
Did you encounter the defendant at the morgue?
Yes.
What did the defendant do at the morgue?
At first, he was grieving over Boba in the viewing room. However, at some point, he did grab the body in an attempt to take it outside of the morgue.
Did the defendant say what he was there to do?
I don't remember his exact words, but he was going to take Boba out of there was his ultimate goal.
Okay. Your Honors, for the people of the court and for understanding of this narrative, the people would like to introduce Exhibit A, which is Police Report 17966, which is drafted by Sergeant Brittany Angel.
Okay.
That details the narrative of the altercation at the morgue. So, after Jordan took Boba Stone's body, what happened?
He didn't quite make it to the front door of the morgue. He got maybe about halfway there, where we had him drop the body. At that point, he did pull out a weapon and take someone hostage. I believe it was Fiona.
Okay. After taking Fiona hostage, how did this altercation end?
Objection, Your Honor. Relevance.
Rebuttal?
This is speaking to the erratic and violent nature of which the scene happened around Boba Stone's body, who is the victim.
It ended in a shootout when negotiations broke down in the parking lot of the morgue.
Okay. Did the defendant say anything during this altercation?
During negotiations, his main demand was basically exchanging the hostage for free passage and the body of Boba.
Okay. In your expert opinion, did the defendant seem disturbed or violent in nature?
I mean, he seemed very. Obviously, he seemed violent. He had a hostage. He had a gun to her head. Yeah.
Okay. How did the situation end?
With the shootout.
Gotcha. Okay. Are you aware of any investigations concerning Jordan Steele that also involved Boba Stone?
Yes, we were investigating him for potential drug-related charges.
Okay. How was Boba Stone involved in this investigation?
Boba Stone was the one who came to us and told us that Jordan Steele might be involved in these drug charges.
To clarify, Boba Stone was a informant?
For this one particular incident, yes.
Okay. I have no further questions for this witness, Your Honor.
Okay. You may cross.
All right, Officer Malden, same situation. If I ask any questions that don't make sense to you, just ask me to rephrase them or slow down, okay?
All right.
All right. How long have you been with the Los Santos Police Department?
My academy was in the 3rd week of August, I believe, so since then.
All right, and just out of curiosity, is that the same academy that Jordan Steele was part of?
Yes, I was part of the...
Objection scope.
Sustained.
Sustained, yeah.
All right, and
If you'd like to put Mr. Malton on the recall list, feel free. Let's stay in the scope.
Yes, Your Honor. As a function of your training during academy or throughout your time with the LSPD, have you received any training in homicide investigations?
Objection scope.
It goes to the fact that they asked him whether or not he was the lead officer in this situation. If he's the lead officer, then his training and expertise are relevant to the scope.
Rebuttal.
That's a good argument. Withdrawn.
Okay, overruled.
So I have had experience investigating murders in the past.
All right, Officer Malton, that wasn't my question, though. Did you receive training,
apologies.
or is it just field experience?
Training in academy, no, so it would have been field experience.
Okay. And in what way was it determined that yourself and Copper were going to be the leads on this file?
Well, I was the primary to respond to the call, and due to the informant nature of Boba, since he was talking to us, we were going to be the ones to investigate his murder because it may be related to that.
I'm actually going to reserve the rest of my questions for direct so that I don't have to worry about staying within the scope. I've got quite a bit to ask Officer Malden, and I'd rather it make chronological sense, Your Honor.
Very well.
I'd like to mark him for recall.
Noted.
Redirect.
I have no questions for redirect unless Counselor Bunbury does.
No.
All right, Officer Malton, you may step down. You're on the recall list, so please stay here.
No worries.
Prosecution, call your next witness.
Currently, we have no more witnesses. We would just like to introduce the People's B, the autopsy report written for Boba Stone.
Okay.
And I believe that'll be all from us.
And with emphasis on Exhibit B and how it's being introduced, the findings of the doctor of a slit across the throat is consistent with EMS Bree Matthews' testimony of a gash across the front of the throat as well. The autopsy report also states that an absence of any sort of defensive wounds on Boba Stone's person, suggesting that he was caught off guard, unaware, and his assailant was somebody that he knew.
Okay, does prosecution rest?
Yes, Your Honor.
All right, defense, go ahead and call your first witness.
We would call Officer Malton to the stand.
Officer Malton, you are still under oath.
Yes, ma'am.
Okay. You may begin your direct.
All right, Officer Malton, I apologize for that brief interruption.
No worries.
So during your, we'll just pick up where we left off. During your time with the LSPD, approximately how many murder cases would you say that you've caught primary on?
I can't say for sure, but I could say one without a doubt back in October.
All right, and out of those, how many would you say were conducted with a knife or another sharp instrument?
Objection relevance?
It goes to a point that I'm going to elaborate a little later on, but it's essentially an inconsistency between Officer Malton's report, which says that there was a stabbing in the neck, and the other testimony and evidence, which says that the throat was sliced.
Rebuttal back to that?
If that is going to be the emphasis of evidence, then Officer Malton would be the opinion of a layperson. He's not a medical expert.
Or it would be the opinion of an expert, considering he's supposed to be a homicide investigator, and determining the cause of death is a part of that upon initially arriving at the scene.
And your rebuttal to that, Mr. Splana?
Is Officer Malton did not directly examine the body to either save Boba Stone's life in the case of EMS Bree Matthews or determine the actual cause of death, as Dr. Serge Cross did. The duties of examining the body had already been performed. This may just be a clerical error.
And your rebuttal to that?
My rebuttal to that would be that under, I believe it's the state's Exhibit A incident report, let me grab the number. 2792 under page 2, the speculation section. Officer Malton is listed as the police officer who wrote this, and he specifically wrote that it was a stabbing, and that's what he bases quite a bit of his analyses from that point forward on. Doesn't appear to come off of the official report, which says that the throat was sliced.
I'm gonna let the other judge decide on this.
I'm gonna overrule. Try to get to your point.
All right, I'll try to get there as quick as I can.
Can you re-ask the question?
Yeah, I'll just repeat the question. So out of the murders that you've investigated, how many would you say were done with a sharp instrument such as a knife, hatchet, machete, whatever you'd consider in that category?
The one murder investigation I performed back in October was done with a hatchet.
All right, and in your field training and experience, would you say that you can tell the difference between what would be a stab wound and what would be a laceration or gash?
No, I would say that upon initial examination of the body, we could only determine a lot of times the type of weapon that is used. My report was written before the full medical autopsy was done.
So just to clarify, your training and experience as a police officer does not allow you to tell whether someone was stuck with the pointy end or whether they were slashed at widely.
Your Honor, I'm submitting a general objection to this due to the circumstances surrounding determining the nature of the wound.
Sustained.
All right. Referring to incident report 2792, where it says brief overview, specifically the speculations section, did you write this, Officer Malton?
I did.
All right. And under that spec, could you go ahead and read that speculation section for us?
Could you give me that report number again? I could pull it up on my MDT.
Yes, it should be 2792. It's a second page close to the bottom.
Are you referring to this section that says speculation chain of events?
Yes, where you essentially, yeah, that particular section.
All right, and would you like me to just read this section, or did you have a specific question?
In relation to that particular section, well, first and foremost, keeping in mind that you said you are going to defer to the autopsy or medical exam, does it change your speculation at all if the nature of the wound was a slashing into the throat as opposed to a stabbing, as you state in your speculation section?
Give me a moment to reread my speculation section. No, this would not change my speculation.
So it is your professional opinion as an investigator and a police officer that someone could just as easily slash someone's throat as they could quickly stab them in the manner described in the speculation section.
It is.
And have you responded to, how many calls have you responded to, or how many files have you been the lead on where there was a someone who had their throat slashed?
Objection relevance?
It goes to the nature of the crime. Officer Malton has written in his speculation section that he believes that someone essentially close to the victim was able to, I guess, sneakily pull a knife and then quickly slash their throat like John Wick. It's different, and common sense dictates that it's different when it's a stabbing. Throat slashings generally occurred differently.
This goes back to the general objection, Your Honor.
Yeah, the autopsy shows what it shows by a medical professional. So,
I'm just the thing that I'm sorry, Your Honor. The thing I'm questioning Officer Malton on is his speculation therefrom, because when he speculated, he appeared to be relying on the idea of a stabbing, not a slashing. So I just want to clarify that nothing's changed there.
You have the autopsy report. So
correct.
what he speculates on at this point is irrelevant to this case. Sustained.
All right, I'll just move on to my next series of questions. Officer Malden, on that same report is attached a scene of the a photo of the scene of the crime that took place. You said that you did not return to the scene until after you were notified by EMS that Boba Stone was already dead, correct?
Objection leading.
Did you? Yeah.
All right, I'll rephrase the question, Your Honor.
Go ahead. Sustained.
Officer Malden, at what point in time did you arrive at the scene of the crime in the case here?
I couldn't tell you an exact time, but it was before the body arrived at the morgue.
Officer Malden, you testified previously that it was after you'd been notified of a dead body at Pillbox. Is that not correct?
The morgue and the hospital are two different locations.
Fair enough. So, just to clarify for the court, chronologically, this would have occurred after Boba Stone had already been transported to Pillbox Medical.
Correct.
And do police officers have access to these same 911 calls that come in as the EMS do?
If they're made using the 911 or the 311 system, yes.
Okay. So, do you know the approximate duration of time between when that 911 call came in and you arrived on scene to begin collecting evidence?
No, I do not. If I had to put a very rough estimate on it, it would probably be in the range of 15 minutes after the call was received, or after we were called down to Pillbox, rather. Evidence tends to degrade rather quickly, and so time is always of the essence, so I like to examine the scene as soon as possible in these cases. That's typically the first question I ask of witnesses is, where did this occur, so I could examine the scene as quick as possible.
So in this particular circumstance, the crime scene was at the very least left completely open to anyone for a duration of at least 15 minutes.
I would not say at least 15 minutes. I would say at most.
At most. So if we had to put a minimum time on it, what time would you put on that?
5.
So somewhere between 5 and 15 minutes, this crime scene was left free and open. Were there any units positioned to ensure that no one was tampering with the crime scene in any way?
We did not know where the crime scene was until it was showed to us by a witness, and since it was showed to me by a witness, I was the one who was processing it right then and there.
All right. And did you take the photograph that's attached to report 2792?
Can I take a look at the photograph?
Yeah, go ahead and take a look at the photograph to refresh your memory. I believe it's labeled murder scene. It's kind of spelled like Mordor, but I assume that's a typo.
Yes, I would have taken these pictures. I believe I actually took all of these photos.
Okay. And you also searched the body of the deceased, is that correct?
That is correct.
And did you find anything to be missing from the body of the deceased?
I mean, I don't know what he typically carries, so I couldn't say if anything was missing, but I did see a lot of stuff he still had on him. That piqued my curiosity.
All right. And whenever you've made it back 5 to 15 minutes later to examine the crime scene, were there any murder weapons that were left behind, or anything that could have been a murder weapon left behind?
Negative. I canvassed the area, however, I found no weapons.
All right. Whenever you can't say you canvass the area, how wide of a net are we talking here? How far did this canvas go?
It typically varies depending on circumstances, but I would say for this particular canvas, I searched just through not random, but every dumpster I could find from, I would say approximately the south of Legion Square area to Vinewood, downtown Vinewood.
Okay. And was this just you that was canvassing this particular area?
Negative. I made a 311 call asking officers to canvass the trash cans in the approximate area of the murder scene. I know at least 2 officers did respond and say they would help. So they were covering additional areas as well. They reported that they did not find anything out of the ordinary in terms of potential murder weapons.
And I don't suppose we happen to live in an idealistic world where you guys checked every trash can between here and Vinewood, do we?
We do not know the exact location of all the trash cans, or at least I don't. So I just checked the ones that I was able to locate from a grid search.
Fair enough. And yourself or other officers did not find anything during this canvassing, correct?
Correct.
All right. And you stated that... Did you state previously when you arrived at the morgue Mr. Steele was already present, or did he arrive at a later time?
I don't remember exactly. I believe we arrived at approximately the same time. I think he followed the ambulance down there.
And did this occur after your canvassing, or was this just shortly after you were done taking photographs?
I did not start my canvass. I believe I canvassed the immediate area. As I was processing the scene, there are a few dumpsters in that area. However, I widened the net of the canvassing after the morgue incident.
All right, so you, I'm just trying to get a timeline down here. So approximately 5 to 15 minutes after you received the call from EMS, which is sometime between 7 and 9 p.m. to the best that we can tell, you head down. How long did your initial survey of the crime scene and initial canvas actually last, Officer Malden?
As far
Compound
as...
question.
Sustained.
Okay, how long did your initial canvas of the crime scene and inspection last?
Of the initial crime scene, I would say approximately 5 minutes. Again, I typically just like to go to a crime scene to make sure that physical evidence is preserved. And then once the physical evidence is preserved, I typically move on to witness statements or body examination.
Okay. So would it be a fair summary of your testimony then that somewhere between 10 and 20 minutes after you received the initial call from EMS, you were returning to the morgue?
That sounds about right.
Okay, I'm just adding your previous 5 to 15 minutes to that 5 minutes there. So approximately 10 to 20 minutes later, you arrive at the morgue, and Mr. Steele arrives at the same time. Is that what you stated earlier?
I don't remember who arrived first or when, but I believe it was approximately the same time that we arrived there.
All right. And can you describe Mr. Steele's general demeanor to me?
He seemed like he was in grief. You know, he was very over the top is not the right word, but very loud and boisterous, and kind of saying how sad he was.
And you had prior relations. Well, no, that's not the way I want to phrase that at all. You had a prior experience with Mr. Steele, so you know he's kind of a boisterous man to start with. Is that correct?
Objection. Counsel is testifying.
How would you describe Mr. Steele's
There
general
was an
demeanor?
objection. There was an objection on the floor, and I'm going to sustain it for leading as well.
I'll rephrase. How would you describe Mr. Steele's general demeanor, day to day, not that day excluded?
I mean, he's typically very level-headed, but on some situations, depending on the circumstances, he can get loud.
So you, based on your personal experience with Mr. Steele, would it be out of the ordinary for him to express grief in the way that you witnessed?
I don't see him expressing grief all that often, but if it's similar to how he displays emotions at other times, then yes, it would be consistent.
All right. And after the events that occurred, were you the officer who searched Mr. Steele prior to his arrest in that separate report?
I don't recall who searched Mr. Steele. It might have been me, but I don't remember.
Would you like to review report number 179? Let me get the rest of that report number for you, actually. Yeah, 17966 to refresh your memory.
Yeah, let me take a look. The report doesn't say who searched him, but it implies it was the Sergeant Brittany Angel.
Implies that it was Sergeant Brittany Angel. Would you be able to authenticate the authenticity of that report as to the contents of Mr. Steele's pockets?
Again, I doesn't look like I searched him, and this was so long ago, so I have no way to verify if this was in his pockets or not right now.
Based on your investigation therefrom, was there any indication that Mr. Steele had any form of sharp object on his person?
If it's not notated in the report, so I don't know if he did or not.
Is there an objection?
No.
Okay.
All right. And pursuant to that same report, let me actually pull my own notes about this up. Once again, report number 17966 under critical updates. Did you have a warrant issued relating to a raid or the search of the properties of Mr. Steele?
Objection, facts not in evidence.
It was introduced in the state's own exhibit, I believe it's B, Police Report 17966, critical update.
Let's take a look. Okay, and what was your question?
I was asking Officer Malton about the warrant that was issued for the search of Mr. Steele's property in relation to that particular police report.
I'm gonna overrule.
Understood. Thank you, Your Honor.
All right, I'll restate it for you, Officer Malton. Did you pursue a search warrant or a warrant for the search of the properties of Officer Steele?
It would have been for the integrity / government issue department, as well as the vehicles that were stored in garages around the area of the murder scene.
All right, and was that warrant ever executed?
It was.
And did any murder weapon return from that raid?
Negative, but we found drugs that substantiated Boba's claim to us.
I'm going to object to the second half of the witness's statement as irrelevant.
Well, you can object narrative, but yeah, I'll strike it. Sustained.
Your Honor, may I rebut to that?
Sure.
We established earlier that there is a secondary investigation involved that establishes the motive of the defendant to kill the victim. It became relevant to this case during our direct line of questioning.
Well, you can ask him that question during your questioning, but that is not the question he was asked. He was asking about a murder weapon.
Understood.
Mm-hmm. So I'm going to sustain and strike the second half of that answer.
All right. Thank you, Your Honor. Okay, sorry to keep flipping reports on you, Officer Malton, but I'm going to go back to the report beginning with 2-7. Is it fair to say that very early into your investigation you suspected Jordan Steele as a, if not a potential suspect, then as the last individual who saw Boba alive?
He was the last person to see him alive per the witnesses of the EMS taken that day, yes, so he was a suspect pretty quickly.
And you, at any point, did you bring Jordan Steele in for questioning in relation to this case?
We did not.
At any point, did you casually ask Jordan Steele or properly interview or interrogate him as to where he may have last seen Boba?
Objection asked and answered.
If this was asked and answered, then I didn't hear it, because I've actually been curious about this myself. So I'm gonna let the courts hear it again if it has been answered. Overruled.
Understood.
We may have had a casual conversation immediately after the hospital where I was just trying to get witness statements, but we did not have any formal interview.
Fair enough. And is it part of the standard operating procedure of the LSPD to not interview the person who allegedly last saw the decedent alive?
Objection, relevance.
It's relevant insofar as essentially questioning the legitimacy of this investigation. They never bothered asking who
Overruled.
the. Thank you, Your
Understood.
Honor.
Can you repeat the question again?
Is it standard procedure with the LSPD to fail to ask the last person who saw a decedent alive where they may have left that decedent, or whether there was any further information about the whereabouts of the decedent?
Can you be more pointed with your question? Can you just ask this question simply? You're making it very compound. You're also leading him.
Is it part of the standard operating procedures to interview potential witnesses?
I believe there is no SOP when it comes to murder investigations. If you're asking if I would like to interview suspects in murder investigations, the answer would be yes.
All right. And one last question. Why didn't you interview Jordan Steele in relation to this case?
Jordan Steele was also the prime suspect in the Caden murder, and these cases were rapidly becoming intertwined, if you will, because he was our prime suspect for both. We decided to concentrate on the Caden case since that was stronger, and unfortunately, due to time constraints, the Boba investigation kind of fell a little to the wayside.
And when you say we decided, were there overlapping officers appointed to both of those as lead?
I believe on paper, Copper might have been a part of the Caden murder investigation as well, but I don't believe she was as involved with that one as the Boba one.
Fair enough. No further questions, Your Honors. Thank you, Officer Malden.
Good.
Sure, go ahead.
Cross.
Okay. Alrighty, Officer Malton, during the search and seizure executed against Jordan Steele's property, what was found?
There is a report on it that is not in evidence, but as I could recall from that report, it would be a large amount of police-issued weapons that were still in his name, and a large amount of weed as well.
Was this weed relevant to any investigation?
Yes.
What investigation is that?
We were looking into potential drug-related charges, at the very least distribution, if not trafficking for Jordan Steele, based off of the information we received from Boba.
Just for the court's clarity, when you say Boba, do you mean Boba Stone?
Yes.
I have no further questions for this witness, Your Honor.
Redirect.
Splainer jump.
Would you like to redirect?
We've got no further questions for the witness, Your Honor.
Officer Malton, you may step down. Thank you.
With all due respect, Honorable Miss Zamalachkova, are you shouting? Peanut Gallery's having issues hearing you.
Yeah, I am, but you're gonna have to deal with it. I'm sorry.
Okay, that's fine. I just wanted to relay that what was passed to me.
Yeah, I'll try to be louder, but I don't
Thank
know
you,
what's
Your
happening. Any other witnesses' defense?
No, Your Honor.
Do you rest, or would you like to go over evidence?
The defense rests.
All right. Let's take a 5-minute recess, and then we'll move on to closing arguments.
Thank you, Your Honor.
Mm-hmm. Prosecution, go ahead.
Sure. Your Honor, people of the court. The facts add up to write a narrative of events that on that fateful night, February 21st, 2020, a night in which this city lost a friend, a brother, a man who put himself in harm's way to save others on a daily basis. The defense has compared the evidence and testimony presented today as a chained link, missing a vital piece to connect everything together. But I would argue that this case is closer to a puzzle set that has been nearly finished, would it not be for a single missing piece. But it is as a result of the pieces we do have and the context in which they lie that we are able to fill in the pieces' shape and print. The last time Boba Stone was seen alive was with his then friend, Jordan Steele, accounted for today by multiple of Boba Stone's co-workers, all of which testified that Boba Stone was dressed in an outfit worn exclusively when spending time with the defendant. Not even 20 minutes later, likely even less, Boba Stone's body was discovered stabbed to death, meaning it was within the time frame of Boba being left in the parking lot and EMS being called that Boba Stone was killed. Medical examination determines that Boba Stone was killed by a person that he trusted, that he offered no resistance, a deduction made not on whether the victim was sliced as stabbed, but due to the absence of defensive wounds. The victim was found in a parking garage structure, which is similarly significant due to the victim's outfit being a parking stripper. And Jordan Steele's primary entrepreneurial pursuits being parking structures, a place of significance to both parties. And finally, to put any rest of doubt that may remain, after Boba Stone was interred into the morgue, the defendant came into a storm of violence to disturb the corpse of Boba Stone that ended in a violent standoff. As established by Officer Lance Moulton, Boba Stone was an informant against the defendant in another investigation. If the defendant had been made aware of this knowledge, this establishes a motive of this narrative. As Mr. Crane said, this is the missing link to the complete chain. The defendant learned of Boba Stone's involvement in the investigation and decided that Boba Stone must be silenced, and determined that the best means to someone to remain silent is a knife to the throat. This means prove effective to the silence of Boba Stone. The attempted kidnapping of Boba Stone's lifeless body is an act so negligent and reckless in action that no rational explanation can be found for how one of sound and rational mind and ordinary prudence could justify the abduction of a corpse without some ulterior motive. While everyone most certainly has their Fifth Amendment right to remain silent, the fact remains that neither he nor his counsel can offer any alibi to his actions, to where he last saw Boba Stone, or any viable arguments to contest the evidence that has been brought forth today. And it is for the facts presented here today, and the egregious nature of the crimes alleged against a government employee, that the District Attorney's Office is seeking a life sentence without any possibility of parole. Thank you.
Are you ready for me, Your Honors? Nope.
Mm-hmm.
Thank you, Your Honors, and may it please the court. As was previously discussed in opening arguments and has essentially been admitted by the state in closing arguments, it's important to remember that this is a case in which there is no direct evidence as to the defendant's guilt. There is no murder weapon, there is no direct witness, there is no smoking gun. Tonight, the state attempts to emphasize the links of its chain or the pieces of its puzzle or whatever they want to call them, that they believe ties the defendant to this murder. However, the defense urges that this court pay attention instead to the weakened and missing pieces of that puzzle or links in that chain. First, the state has provided absolutely no motive that the defendant would have for the killing of Boba Stone whatsoever. They vaguely allege that Mr. Stone was some sort of confidential informant. However, they have absolutely no proof that Mr. Steele, the defendant herein, was aware of that whatsoever. Further, the state's own witnesses have testified that the defendant and Boba would frequently go towing cars together. They were friends for all intents and purposes. Boba entered into Jordan's vehicle without a second thought in the world. In fact, he clocked out and abandoned his ex-wife and or friend on shift by herself that night to go spend time with him. That's one link of the chain that's missing. Second, the state has no murder weapon. Despite conducting a raid on the defendant's properties, despite allegedly canvassing the immediate area, despite allegedly canvassing everywhere between the site of the murder and the Vinewood Hills, they came up empty-handed. It's further worth noting that they actually searched Mr. Steele directly after the incidents that happened in the morgue thereafter. Again, no murder weapon, nothing that could have been used herein. They had no difficulties locating Mr. Steele. In fact, they processed him for a litany of crimes that he committed while he was grief-stricken thereafter. He was in police custody, and these charges had not been brought against him. Nevertheless, they elected not to question Mr. Steele, formally or otherwise. The state attempts to make this seem as though it's some trick by the defense, as though Fifth Amendment rights were being asserted. However, Mr. Steele was not in custody. He was not detained. And he was not represented by counsel at that stage. He could have been questioned just like anyone else on the street. But the state themselves failed to heed that step. Yet again, another link of the chain missing. Fourth, the state has not proven, despite what they may say about narrowing time frames, that the defendant had the exclusive opportunity to commit this murder. There is a period of anywhere from 15 to 20 to 30, depending on which witness you want to listen to. Minutes where the decedent and the defendant were last seen together. In fact, it seems as though, once again, as I've previously stated, nobody bothered asking Mr. Steele about that. Nobody bothered asking where the last place he saw him was. They simply wrote him down as the prime suspect and moved on with their lives, or, pursuant to the testimony of Officer Malden, moved on to other apparently more important investigations. Finally, it is worth noting that the state has absolutely no evidence of premeditation. As the state's own evidence, I believe it's Exhibit B, report number 17966 states, their best guess as to what happened is that a conversation got heated and that resulted in some sort of killing. As I've already stated, they've wholesale failed to prove that, but even if they did prove that, that means that there was no premeditation. That means that there would be a heat of passion in that action. So the state asks that this court drag Mr. Steele up to Bolingbrook Penitentiary, and they've brought with them, rather than a chain, a contraption that's half cobbled together with paper mache, rope, bits of barbed wire, and anything else they could find in their office to tie Mr. Steele to this murder. For these reasons, the defense respectfully requests that this court return a not guilty verdict and release Mr. Steele immediately from his bail and custody in relation to this case. Thank you, Your Honors.
All right. Coyote and I are going to go back and deliberate. I would like everybody to leave the courtroom and wait outside. Court is in recess. I will put an announcement out when we're ready.
What the fuck? Get out of here, Splainer. What the fuck? You love them. They're trying to put me away for life. The hell is that shit?
Come on. Come on, out.
Professional courtesy. They're trying to put me in prison forever.
All right, Bailiff, can you go ahead and just make sure the door is locked and everything?
Oh God, I'm guilty. What the fuck? What do you mean to make sure the door's locked?
Just for safety, Mr. Steele.
Yeah,
I got the keys.
You got a track record, Mr. Steele.
No, I don't.
Yeah, track record.
You're thinking of someone else.
No, I literally say that to everybody.
Is everyone in the courtroom?
It was under 10 seconds, Bobby. Under 10 seconds.
Is everybody ready?
I believe we are ready, Your Honor.
All right. Let's call this court case back into session. I'm going to render our verdicts. Coyote and I talked for some time in there, went over the evidence. And, you know, there is a puzzle here. And we can pretty much see the whole picture. You know, there's a couple pieces missing here and there. However, the pieces that are missing are so crucial to this case that it lacks a lot. It lacks a lot. We do not have much to go on as far as the actual murder weapon, the motive. In this court's opinion, let me just change the whole thing. In this court's opinion, was not clearly cut enough. I think this is going to be a difficult decision to make, but we have made it. Mr. Steele How long is your sentencing for the other case?
Your Honor, if I may, it was 15 years.
All right, let me do some number crunching here.
Yeah, Yana, just to clarify, it was
Let's
8
pull my
years.
calculator.
In prison, 7 years parole.
It was
Pull
8
my
years, Your Honor.
calculator out. Okay.
7 parole.
7.
Hold on, I'm trying to find my calculator app. Oh, there it is. Okay.
The judge over here is going to give a verdict. After the verdict, I'm going to give a rundown to the conclusion of the verdict made. After the verdict
Yeah.
is made, everyone don't run out of the courtroom. We're not finished.
Okay, perfect. All right, count one of the indictment, murder of a government employee. Jordan Steele. I find you not guilty.
God damn it, no! Why?
That's the.
Oh! You fucker splainer! You son of a bitch! I'll strangle you!
I said not.
Jordan, that's the good one.
Oh.
That's the
Oh,
not
oh,
guilty. That's the good
You
one.
know how easy it is for him to want to kill people.
Oh.
All right, so let me give the
Fantastic.
rundown of this. Basically, there's plenty of factors. Like the district attorney said, this was a puzzle. But the thing is, this isn't a puzzle that's missing one piece where you can look at the puzzle and see what the actual full puzzle is. In this case, the only puzzle piece that was even on the table was one found under a sofa, and the box was put up in the cupboard. You had a motive, but the motive itself was circumstantial because we don't know if Jordan knew or not that Boba was an informant. Better yet, the evidence shows that he didn't know, because if he would have known that Mr. Boba was an informant, then why would he keep the marijuana that Mr. Boba snitched on in his house if he knew that Boba snitched on him? That wouldn't make any sense to us. So the motive itself, not only is it circumstantial, but the motive itself, the evidence shows that it's not true. Second of all, you have no murder weapon. The only thing facing around this whole entire case altogether is all circumstantial evidence. The only evidence given to this courtroom today to point that Mr. Steele was the murderer of Boba is he was the last person seen with him. And we can't even get to the bottom of that because no one questioned him about it. We don't even know what happened in those what happened that 20 minutes before Mr. Boba's demise. We don't know what happened. And the last person that was seen with him wasn't even questioned to find out what happened. Now, I do understand that Mr. Steele could have pled the fifth, and that would have stopped that investigation altogether. But they didn't even attempt to. So we don't know. It wasn't even offered. It wasn't even on the table. So I hope you can understand why the courts came to the decision this case is closed.
Completely understood, Your Honor. Thank you.
Only the PD would have
Mr.
done
Steele.
their job.
Mr. Steele.
Pleading
Yeah.
the fifth and not questioning the man is more or less the same thing. So why do you?
Kareem, do
say
you
that?
want goddamn contempt?
No, Yana, I do not.
Kareem, if you want to talk
All
about
right,
something, you
if
can
have
come up
questions,
here.
please approach me after.
Well, I just
I
afterwards
was-
he said he was gonna grab me up.
Okay. Mr. Steele, stop talking, and I'm going to give you your contempt charge, Mr. Steele. You're going to receive an extra year of parole if you are granted parole. If you're not granted parole, you're going to receive an extra year in Bolingbrook. Understood? No fine.
Okay.
Play fuck around time with me, Mr. Steele.
A year?
Case is adjourned. Well, if you get parole.
Thank you, Your Honor.
Jesus Christ.
Wow, you're kind of a dick.
Yeah, what the fuck? A year?
Oh my god.
At least it's something for murdering Boba.
Oh, here we
Yeah, well, if you loved him so much, why'd you fucking break off the marriage, you dumb bitch?
Oh
Yep.
man.
Mr. Cream, do you have
Murder
something you want to
scumbag.
say? Do you want to come up here?
No, Yana, I don't need a.
All right. I got another thing I gotta do. Dang it. First, I gotta eat. Holy crap.